When classic World of Warcraft was first announced to be re-released, it was set to be one of the biggest moments for all World of Warcraft players in, well, over a decade. After years and years of asking by the players, Blizzard were finally going to be committing to making this dream into a reality. And when the game finally came out in 2019, it was huge. Millions of players jumped back into the world of Azeroth to see where it all began. And it was a moment that you could never truly replicate for a second time on that same scale. But as time went on, where players once asked for no changes, some issues began to appear with this old MMO. The modern player base was far more used to optimizing gameplay, poking holes in game design, and doing things for the sake of efficiency, even at the expense of their own enjoyment of the game. And where many had hoped the re-release would recapture some of that 2004 WoW magic, it was apparent that times had changed, and so had the players engaging with the game. Dungeon groups often turned into some variation of spell cleaves, where you had 2 or 3 mages aiming down an entire instance, then running out to reset and repeating. Botters worked fast to harm the game's economy by farming resources in the open world and making life difficult for the average player. And the raids, despite being trivial compared to what many players have been used to on the retail version of the game, were met with crazy levels of optimization through buff stacking, class stacking, and of course, world buffs. It was still a good time, but it was also quite different to what many of us expected. But what if all that changed? What if one core fundamental gameplay rule was altered? How much could having one life on a character really change things? The answer is even more than I expected it to. Whether you got a chance to try out 2019 Classic WoW's release or not, Hardcore has so far turned out to be quite the different experience. And in today's video, I'm going to be going over why Hardcore is the experience Classic WoW really should have been back in 2019. But first, a quick word from today's sponsor, HelloFresh. HelloFresh takes the stress out of mealtime by delivering fresh ingredients and easy recipes right to your doorstep. You can choose from gluten-free, keto, vegan, vegetarian, and many other regimes, and know that your meals have been tried and tested by professional cooks. Plus, they are also calorie counted, so you know exactly what you are going to be getting. You can order in a week's menu in one go, and it will arrive fresh in under 7 days and be put in special cooling packaging, which is easily recyclable afterwards. HelloFresh also offer a ton of extra options and choices so that you can switch up your order week to week. This includes 40 recipes and over 100 add-on items to choose from. So take the hassle out of shopping and planning today and give America's #1 meal kit a try now. You can use my link or go to hellofresh.com and use code POGWillESEP50 for 50% off plus free shipping. Then again, you could click the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen with your phone. Many thanks to HelloFresh for the sponsor today. Let's get back to WoW. Let's start from the start. When Classic released in 2004, you heard tales of how it would take people literally months worth of grinding to finally hit level 60. There was a little information online about the game, less communication among the player base, and many of us had to resort to sitting there reading the quest text to figure out where we had to go for the next step in our journey. And it taking so long all but guaranteed that there would be other players out in the open world working towards that common goal of finally hitting the maximum level. In Hardcore, well, most characters don't make it past the level 15. And those early game resets will mean that as long as this game mode is even somewhat popular, those early game zones are going to feel alive. And that sense that there is other people in the open world make it feel as though it is a strong start for an MMORPG. It also means there will be people to group with for harder quests. The lower tier leveling dungeons will remain highly accessible. There will be tons of lower tier items on the auction house and so on. And when you do finally see a higher level player, who knows how long it's taken them to get to that level. It could be their first attempt, it could be their 10th attempt. And though players level much faster in general nowadays, for some people out there, it's going to take a substantial amount of time to progress a character towards max level. It will once again be a thing of substance just to have a high level character. And with that, some prestige returns towards the end game goals. If you end up managing to buy an epic mount, for example, that's going to be a huge achievement worth showing off. Not only did you manage to get level 60, and you managed to farm enough gold without having your character die once, but you also committed to that huge investment. That makes your character that much more special. There could be two separate players in hardcore. One of them is level 32 and is cautiously entering Stranglethorn Vale on their 7th character. The other is level 60 and has an epic mountain raiding gear, and they both have the same amount of overall time played. Having high-level geared characters stand out was a thing for a very short space of time on the 2019 Classic release. For hardcore, I think the progressed characters are going to stand out a lot more. And that's even before we get on to raiding itself, which again is given so much more value by having a one-life character. In 2019, you could do a walk through Stormwind or Orgrimmar, and there will be half a dozen Thunder Furies and characters in near enough full best in slot gear. The raiding was so easy that everyone was able to walk in, and if you're lucky enough, you got some nice purple items for your time. Raiding in hardcore is about to once again be for only the very few top-end players. Now I will say just recently the world first Molten Core was completed the other day with 0 deaths by North American Guild Frontier on Defias Pillager, which is a huge accomplishment to be done in the space of 2 weeks. But that is one group of 40 of the most dedicated players out of a game with thousands and thousands of players. There is so much raiding content left to do as well, and it's all available right now. You could go and zone into Nax Ramus if you wanted to. And raiding is and always has been really risky as well in Classic. Sure, you might be good enough to get a character to level 60, but are you going to risk all of that time spent in a raid? I'd be scared even going into Molten Core. I've had some near enough unavoidable deaths in there during my time raiding on Classic. For example, the Firewalker mobs have an ability called Flame Blossom where they just start shooting fireballs at random players. If you were to get hit twice in a row or you pull 2 of them by mistake, you can get one shot if you don't partially resist either of the spells. Oh, and Living Bomb on Barangeddon can crit, by the way. I saw this happen twice throughout my whole time raiding on Classic, and one of them happened to me. So you always need a greater fire protection potion popped in advance here. So yeah, raiding, it's not exactly the hardest in Classic, but it's very easy to get one shot by random mechanics, or by just not paying full attention to your threat meter for a few seconds. You know, back in 2006, Nax 40 was estimated to have been cleared by well less than 1% of the total player base. The raid had such a legacy tied to it for this reason. It was seen as super high-end content that only the sweatiest of gamers even had the chance of witnessing, and in hardcore, that legacy is absolutely going to make a comeback. Hardcore puts the risk and the reward back into raiding. You will know the raiding guilds on your realm. Their gear and their mounts are going to stand out, there will be few of them, and the prestige in being in a good raiding guild will return. And I think that is far closer to the original WoW experience. And it's not just the high level or raiding experience that has changed, things are also different in a good way when you're first starting off on your journey. As mentioned earlier, the starting zones always being busy is and will continue to be a great thing. Classic did used to suffer from a sense that if you join the game late on that you would be behind, and there wouldn't be players to do low level dungeons with, the low level economy in the game would be gone, and that starting off at endgame would be difficult. In 2004 to 6, Vanilla's population was booming and just kept going up and up. They had that constant influx of newer players to the game, and whilst most hardcore players will not be new to the game per se, they will be emulating that experience of creating busy low-level zones. There is also, for once, less importance of being on the mega server or having picked the right faction on your server. We really are in the dark as for server population on hardcore. Usually we rely on sites which scrape Warcraft log data for estimates, but that's not going to be so useful when there's one guild that's cleared a raid and posted logs. On top of that, there just aren't PvP servers at all, and I know the PvP focus leveling experience can be a lot of fun, but it always, eventually, without fail, leads to servers just sorting themselves into Alliance should play on this server and Horde should play on that server. Without PvP servers, this is not a problem. On top of that, the servers are heavily layered at the moment. I've been playing on Stitches most of the time, and often it's had 10 layers. That's like a full release day of an expansion amount of layering non-stop. So yeah, you don't need to be on a mega server to find players. All of the servers are packed. Also, part of the concern with wanting to be on a mega server, as is what's happened on Wrath of the Lich King by the way, is that you want to maximize your chance to find other people to play with. Thing as in hardcore, the focus for most players is going to be the lower level content. I don't really see this being an issue either. This might well be the first time in classic history where it truly really doesn't matter where you want to roll or which faction you want to play. Not only that, but I think there's nowhere near as much pressure to min-max or pick the meta race class combos. Now, I will say the exception to this is if you are dead set on raiding in hardcore and that's really your only goal. But if you just lost a character at level 25, I'd probably think more about getting to level 30 next time and worrying less about the implications of your human warrior having +5 sword skill at level 60. For most players, what you want to roll makes a lot more sense just to be preference, rather than what's seen as being best due to performance at level 60. Another side effect from the low levels being so busy is that there is, as predicted, an absolute metric ton of low-level items on the auction house. You can get well-itemized rare gear for sometimes less than a gold, which is just so cheap. Usually in Classic, you're waiting on a quest reward to not be absolutely garbage before you can upgrade your gear. On Blizzard's Hardcore, well, I went to the auction house on a level 20-something hunter and replaced all my bad armor with items that had agility on it for less than 1 gold. And if you can just send 1 gold over to your bank vault as you earn it, you can gear up, buy potions, consumables, all of that good stuff at super low prices. Speaking of gold, botting hasn't taken off yet. I've no doubt that it will. We are still into the early days of hardcore realms, but where there is gold to be made, there will be people looking to profit in real life. That's very much the nature of the game. And finally, a part of classic WoW has started to matter again, just in a different way than it's ever done so before, but arguably an even better way, and that is the community aspect. People would always go on about this before Classic's 2019 release. Players' reputation on a server, your actions having consequences, all of that stuff. But hardcore takes this on a whole different meaning. The people you group up with and run dungeons with successfully become a lot more memorable to you. You see the familiar names leveling up alongside you and know that they're still going strong. Sometimes you even save or get saved by another player, and that's going to be a memorable moment when it happens. And hopefully you don't see them at the back of a trog cave a few hours later. Equally, if someone ninjas something from you, if they steal a mining node or a chest when you're clearing mobs next to it, well, sometimes they pop up on your death log a few hours later, and I have to say that doesn't feel too bad either. A one-life character really does bring new meaning into the game for relationships that you have with other players. It's definitely different from Classic originally, but in a very interesting way. So whether you've been trying out hardcore since its release or have been on the fence about it, this game mode has gotten off to an amazing start. And I have to say, if you wanted a Classic experience that's more reminiscent of 2004 compared to 2019, Classic Hardcore is something that you need to try. Let me know how your hardcore journeys have been going so far. I feel that this game mode is even more popular than I expected it to be, and hopefully, fingers crossed, this means good things for the future of Classic as a whole, but time will tell on that. But, as always, thank you all so much for watching and listening in, and I'll see you all in the next one very soon.